Another mini PC review from me, so this time I am switching back again to Intel. I've looked a lot at AMD mini PCs, and this is a 10th gen one here that you can pick up from Banggood, which is where I ordered it. Now, this model sells for about $300 US. It is a bare bones, and it is really identical, exactly the same as the 8th gen model I reviewed. However, the difference being this has a newer chipset in it. So higher clocks on this one with the Core i7. It is the 10510U. Turbos up to 4.9 gigahertz. It's a quad core, but with the 8 threads. So similar there, being a quad core like the AMD's, and it has Intel's integrated graphics, which is UHD. Not as powerful as the Vega 8 graphics that I have been looking at here. So this model, very small and compact, as you can see. Great, good size. It supports NVMe drives and also 2.5-inch SATA 3 drives as well you can install within this, even though it is quite small. So my time testing it out, it has a very, very good fan profile on this. The fan noise is great for the kind of performance that this gets. And you can actually tweak it up a little bit, the power limits, to gain some additional performance, which I will talk about and show you in this in-depth review here of a Core i7 mini PC that sells for about $310 or so US. Bare bones, by the way. So we do need to install some RAM and an SSD, which I'll show you now. So in the box, you'll find our main power cable. Here it is an EU1, and it does use that universal, what I call the Mickey Mouse connector. You see what I mean? It looks like a Mickey Mouse kind of head there. So very easy to source a replacement. We have a user manual and some rubber feet right here and some screws too for securing the 2.5-inch drive into place, and another 2 screws, the silver ones, for the actual case housing. Now the power supply, this one is from a known brand, Delta Electronics. It's 40 watts, and I really do like the size of this one. It is tiny, as you can see, very, very small. Alright, so installing our components is easy. This being a bare bones means it has no RAM and it has no SSD or operating system, of course. So what I'm going to do is put the RAM in. So I've got 2 sticks of DDR4 2666 megahertz. They are 16 gigabytes each, so 32 in total here. Very easy to install, so SODIMM RAM, simply just line it up and push it into place and then push it down. That clips it in and you hear like a click noise, and that means that RAM is secured there. And our SSD, so you can either install a SATA 3 M.2 card, but it's got to be the 2280 size, or NVMe, which I'm going to use. So NVMe drives, of course, much faster. This one here is a Sabrent, and this one reads over 3,000 megabytes per second, and plenty of storage for all my files and things to use for my reviews. So you simply just screw that into place. Again, very, very easy to do. Most people should not have a problem with this. Now, there is a second solution, of course, for storage as well. If you wanted more space, then you can install, say, a cheaper but larger capacity spindle hard drive, but here I do have, just to show you, a Samsung 850 EVO SSD. So the plug is right here. You simply plug that into the motherboard, which is located just here. So once that is done, you put all the lid back, make sure you don't have that cable snagged up, lid goes in, and then you screw those 2 screws in the side and you're done. So if you missed the video of the first one that I reviewed, which looks identical to this, but the components inside are different, well, the chipset. So this has the 8565U, that's a Core i7, 8th gen, and now we've got the 10th gen in here, which is the 10510U. Slightly faster, but really it's the same, and especially when you see the benchmarks later on, they're almost identical in performance. So 2 USB 2, 2 USB 3, headphone jack with mic support, 2 status LEDs, power button here. If we take a look at the left side, this is the exit vent. Now both sides have this plastic strip here, and the wireless antenna is located just behind that for optimum placement. So the signal passing through the plastic is much better than metal. That is why they do this. And then most of the ports here are on the back. So we've got gigabit LAN here, that's power into, of course. USB 3, 2 of them. And we've got HDMI 2 spec, a display port, which is 1.4, and Type-C. So just like the first model I looked at, the Type-C port is only USB data, and that is it, okay? It doesn't support a video out, and not on my unit right here, which is a shame. This is one of the cons. It would have been nice to be able to have video out on this, And even Thunderbolt would have been better, of course. Now, these two holes right there are for the screws. Once you put the components inside, you then add the two screws there that I showed you with the contents of the box, locking everything into place. And I'll quickly show you the underside here. So this is our intake vent, and then we've got these slots, well, marks there, where we place the 4 rubber feet on the bottom. So the fan is actually right here. You can just see it underneath, blowing that hot air then out this side here that I showed you before. Well, that's actually an intake. It's that side, the left side, where the hot air comes out. Now, if you remove the 4 screws on the motherboard, you can pull it right out. So for maintenance, if you wanted to clean this fan, if it was full of dust, you can do this, which is good. Or you wanted to repaste it. Now, I'm going to keep the thermal paste that they have used. I'm not going to go there because I want to keep it all stock for my review. Now, it is quite a large copper pad that it does have. So the CPU is just over here, and you can see they've used 2mm thick copper right there, which is good to see. So they haven't just gone with a little bit of alloy to keep it cool. No, proper copper there. That's great. So the build quality of it is not bad at all. This motherboard has got a lot on such a small little motherboard. And you'll see here too, that if you did run into trouble that you needed to reset the BIOS or it wouldn't boot, you somehow bricked the BIOS, you've got a plug right here. So this one's for the CPU fan, and we've got a plug just there, which is for that BIOS battery, which is here. So if you unplug that, that will then reset the BIOS. Here we have our BIOS now. So there are a few interesting settings in here we can tweak. It's not 100% locked down to us, but we don't have any power limit options here in the BIOS, at least with this one. So interesting settings to show you is this one, okay? So we have got under boot order, strangely enough, is the auto power on. So if you do intend to run this as a server, or you want it to automatically power itself back on if you did lose power, then you simply enable that. So that is good to have that option there. Under advanced, there are a few interesting settings. Well, the best one that I have discovered and seen here is RAM disk configuration. So if you want to make yourself a RAM disk, you can do this with this particular BIOS, which is great to have on a mini PC. And then we do have under here, there's a few other little settings that we could possibly tweak if you want to do that, but no power limit settings, unfortunately, in the BIOS here. So I have Windows all set up with the up-to-date drivers, and I used Intel's driver update utility as well to get the latest graphics and wireless drivers. So the wireless card on this particular model is the wireless AC3165. It is not really that fast. Maximum transfers are 330 megabits per second. Install the Intel AX200 to get much quicker speeds. And we've got Realtek gigabit LAN on this too as well. So what am I showing you here? This is Intel's Extreme Tuning utility. Highly recommend installing an older version, or you do that little hack so you can get it to run on the Comet Lake, which this particular chipset is. And you'll see here that you can do a little bit of tweaking. So with our core voltage, this is recommended with a lot of these Intel since the KB Lake, definitely. The KB Lake R, and then this one, all the same architecture, 14 nanometers, is to do this. So you want to just undervolt a little bit, it helps boost our performance. So you see also power limits. So stock, this is actually set to 18 watts, okay? 18 watts is the power limit level 1, and then power limit level 2 is set to 25 watts. And that limits our performance. So when I was stress testing it, you get a maximum turbo on all 4 cores of just 2 gigahertz because the whole time it's power limit throttling. You can see right now it's power limit throttling. This is normal for this type of chip. Remember, it is actually 15 watts, but we can run a higher power limit if you do that. And then the 45 that I'm currently running, you're able to get then 3.2 to 3.3 gigahertz across all 4 cores. The trade-off is higher temperatures, so it will get up then to about 89 degrees, and it's still fine. The fan runs a little bit more, but it is well worth it. So I'll show you the kind of difference you can expect too as well with that. So Cinebench stock, okay, you get 515, and that's with the 18 watt power limit. That is also with no undervolting. And what happens when you undervolt and the power limit increase? Boosts it right up, okay, to 713 CB. And still only getting up to about 89 degrees, which is fine. And the cooler's handling that extra power so well. And this means it's actually performance very similar then to the last mini PC I reviewed, which was the Ryzen 5 3550H powered one. Also a quad core, but it's 65 watts. 45 watts, that particular chip. And so it's good performance here. Now, Cinebench, what about R20? No actual difference here. Stock came out to be faster. I don't really know why. At 1620 points. And then with it at a 45 watt limit, 1600. So that didn't make any difference really at all for that. Now the internal storage, if you're wondering just how fast that Sabrent is it running at PCI times 4 the slot? Definitely is. Okay, so we're getting very good speeds as you can see. It's going to vary depending on what kind of drive you install. But I highly recommend go with the Sabrent, go with the Samsung, get those maximum speeds if you are going to go NVMe. That is with your main drive, with your operating system. The other things to point out too, that, okay, Cinebench scores. This is, Geekbench. Geekbench 4, very, very good single core score here. So this is why Windows to me on the AMDs feels a little bit slower, because it has a lower single core score. It has lower turbos, and the short boosts that Windows loves for performance does make it feel just quite a bit more snappier compared to the AMDs that I typically review. And then when you have a look at Geekbench 5 score, again, it's quite good, the single core score. This is with an undervolt only, not touching the power limits with this. And that compares, how does that compare actually to the last mini PC, the AMD one I reviewed? You can see that there is a big difference here between that one, that quad core, the Ryzen 5, the 3500H, compared to what we are running now. So that is why I'm talking about that difference. You can actually see and feel how much faster Windows is when the single core scores are so much higher there. And that's the Geekbench 5 score of that last mini PC I reviewed, the AMD one. It's still good, but Intel definitely does perform better with this type of benchmark. So overall, performance-wise, they're very, very snappy. Now, I won't show you spreadsheets, docs, and things like that, because it is just so quick. There's really no point in me doing that. But I will just demonstrate the playback here for 4K files. Now, YouTube 4K streams perfectly fine. There's no dropped frames. But what about demanding file? Jellyfish, 140 megabits per second. HEVC 10-bit. Little stuttery to begin with, and then it is really smooth. So that performance, very, very good. Not a problem with this demanding file. What about HDR? Now, I don't seem to have HDR with this particular model. The output from the display, 4K, 60 Hz, so it's HDMI 2, but I don't seem to have HDR. Even though my monitor supports it, it's showing that it doesn't. Windows drivers issue, perhaps, or it just is not going to support it. But that playback, very, very good, really quick, smooth, and not a problem. So anything you throw at this mini PC, it handles it really well. It is very, very quick. Feels so snappy and fast. And to also point out that there's no problems with the USB ports on this one. I know the 8th generation model I looked at, it needed a BIOS update some of the units to access drives, external hard drives via the USB 3 ports, but this, no, not a problem. So I've got a 4 terabyte drive here, and it is working just off the ports power alone. You don't need a second cable or anything. As it should, works just fine. Transfers are about 100 or so megabytes per second, which is really the fastest it can do being a spindle hard drive. And our audio latency, this is with latency monitor. So the highest measured interrupt to process latency is, well, not quite as good as some of the AMD mini PCs I've been reviewing in the channel here. So if you're going to be using this for real-time audio, you might actually be better off with one of those AMD ones, the ones I've reviewed that have the Ryzen 5s in them, for example. And on to 4K video editing now here with Adobe Premiere Pro 2020. So the timeline in the beginning when you first load it up is very, very slow. With our resolution on playback here set at half, it is fast, it's smooth. This is about the same as the other mini PCs I'm looking at with the AMDs on full. Definitely there. So they're comfortable. It seems to be fine there as well. And let's just go back to some different areas here in the timeline. And that basically just can seem sometimes a little bit slow with that. And they definitely deliver. But even at full, it's running pretty good, okay? It's not too bad. Now, ideally, with editing 4K video, I do highly recommend that you at least have a dedicated GPU. It just makes things so much quicker. But we'll have a look at the export times now. We'll do my 1 minute of footage. Okay, and we'll see how long it takes, because this should be, okay, the last AMD I looked at was just over a minute, which is actually a bit slower than I expected. So start there and export, and it should rip through this. That seems to be taking a bit longer as well. It seems recent Adobe updates have slowed the performance down. I don't know why. This is jumping all over the place because I've seen it do it, this similar kind of spec, in 22 seconds, and this is looking like it's going to be over a minute now as well. So why are they doing this, Adobe? I don't know. And I have got it all set to use the GPU too as well. For the rendering, you can see that the GPU, our UHD graphics here, is at 100%, and the CPU is about 50, but we'll see how long it is. Okay, it's about to finish. There we go. So that was about a 1 minute and 5 seconds, which is actually a little bit slower than the last AMD. And that makes that last AMD look good. So why on earth has our time gone over double now with recent updates from Adobe? I do not know. It's just the way their program is. And it's poor to see this. Hopefully they will have a new patch that improves the performance again like it used to be. Because before, it was so quick. You can see there's the file there on the desktop and it should be flawless without any glitches. Okay, see, there are no problems with that. So Grand Theft Auto 5. So I have it set on lowest possible settings, but it is 1080p, and really this game I think should be run at 720p. Now you're probably seeing the frame rate is much better than expected for Intel integrated UHD graphics, and that is because, remember, I am actually running 45 watt power limit here. So yes, the thermals are getting, it just touched 90 degrees. It's getting quite hot now, but it's not too bad when you touch it. It's just peaking now at 90, and some people might not be happy with this. Actually just hit 91, so it is getting a little hot. So performance wise, 30 frames per second, it's borderline kind of not really playable, a bit too laggy for my liking. What would happen now if I set it to the stock power limits? So let's have a look at the difference, going from 45 watts down to the max 25, or the 18 that it lets us have out of the box. Now the frame rate, you can see 20 frames per second, 19. This is too laggy, and we're hitting that 18 watt limit there, and that's severely affecting the performance. I mean, we're losing like about an average of about, 7-8 frames per second just because of the power limit. But look at the thermals. The thermals then will max out in the mid-70s. That's the kind of thermals you're always going to see with this mini PC. Even when gaming, pushing it hard, video editing, if you keep the stock power limit, always be in the mid-70s. But when you push it up to 45, that's when you'll reach 90. So thermals are actually quite good. Now I will drop it down to 720p, and we'll take a look at how it performs then. 720p at stock and 45 watt power limits. So we're getting approximately 34 frames per second now, 720p at 18 watts, which is making this game now a little more playable, but it's still got a lot of tearing. Look at that when you look around. That's still way too slow. So now I'm going to adjust that power limit, put it back up to 45 watt. I mean, look at those temperatures. 67, 70 degrees. Very, very good. But let's see it now at 45. So now at 720p with that 45 watt power limit, increased power limit, the frame rate's much better, but it's still underperforming really compared to the AMD. Vega 8 integrated graphics is so much quicker and better at handling even this game. So if you intend to game with this one here, definitely keep it to 720p and just use a power limit that you're happy with. So you don't have to use 45 watts, you can use 35, and that will keep the temperatures a little bit lower because it still is peaking to 90 degrees here. Now onto a little bit of gaming. So this is Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and I've got it set to all the lowest possible settings, but 1080p, and I don't have the typical overlay because, well, it treats that as, say, cheating. But I'm getting around 70 frames per second, so this is not quite as good as the Vega 8 graphics, which I was seeing around 90 to 100 frames per second. So Vega 8 definitely performs a little bit better, and if you need that integrated graphics performance, then that's probably why you would opt then for the AMDs, just to try and get a little bit better performance. So I'm just going to run out here and probably die straight away, see if I can get any kills. No, there's no one actually around here. Wow. Okay, there we go. Getting shot at already. And I don't even know where the hell they're shooting at me. From behind. Thermals now. So this unit is very good if you keep the stock power limits, okay? So the 18 watt stock power limit with the 25 power limit level 2, you will see maximum temperatures of just about the mid-70s. That's it. It will not go over. That's stressing out both the GPU and the CPU. So excellent cooling on this one. The fan is also very quiet most of the time. Only under load, you will just hear it a little bit, and then it disappears. It goes away. So very good fan profiles. So temperatures, when I took the lid off, I ran it with the lid on, of course, but when I took it off and had a look at the VRMs, they get up to about 55 degrees under load. So yes, they are quite hot to the touch, but that's a very good temperature. I've seen VRMs get up to 70 degrees, even 80 degrees on some of the mini PCs I've reviewed. They do get very, very hot, but here they don't. Now, when you increase the power limits, then you'll see, as I pointed out, a maximum temperature of about 90 degrees peak, and you sometimes see then the VRMs getting up to about 65 degrees, almost towards 70, a lot hotter. Now, the power use, I'm talking about stock here, okay? Stock power use, idle's a little bit higher than I expected, about 14 watts, sometimes around 13. And under max load with, again, the stock power limits, it's about 33 watts, which is very good for max load because it is limited, of course, with that lower power limit. So very good fan noise on this. But here is a quick sample at 100% load, stock, that is. And just very briefly here to point out that if you do intend to run Linux on this, that yes, it will run and you will have no issues with drivers as long as you use a recent distro. And the performance of it is very, very quick. So this is a great mini PC for Linux users. And maybe you could even use this for Hackintosh, but I don't think the wireless card's compatible. You'll have to use a Realtek one, and there's going to be a lot of workarounds and things. But I don't get into Hackintosh personally in this channel for legal reasons. So all up, this is a great mini PC. If you want some decent performance, you want a quad core, and you want something that is very small and compact, yet you can still squeeze in and fit a 2.5-inch drive in this one, as I showed you. Now thermals, if you keep the factory power limit, absolutely top, excellent thermals on this. So it will turn off the fan and it'll be silent for quite some time. And then, okay, the fan comes on a little bit, but low RPMs that you can barely even hear it. Now my unit, I think, has a very good thermal job that's been done on it from the factory. If you have a slightly higher fan noise, I would recommend, if your game, of course, do it, is repaste it. But I haven't repasted or touched this one. It's just been reviewed out of the box. So it gets, yes, up to about 55 degrees when pushed hard internally, which is actually very good. The little cooler on there does a good job at pushing that heat out. That's why we're getting that good fan noise as well from it. Now, if you want to gain the additional performance I showed you, push up the power limit, but it will get hot then. That's the trade-off. Pushing 45 watts, maybe a little bit too much for some people. So in my ambient temperatures here of 25 degrees, it would hit 90, 91 degrees Celsius, which is getting, yeah, a little too hot. So run it at 35 watts, and you still gain a very good balance between thermals and power. So very quick. Just running Windows, if you intend to run Windows and you don't really care too much about integrated graphics performance, then this one is faster than the AMDs I have reviewed. I cannot deny it. It just feels so much snappier and quicker Windows 10. Why is that? That's because of the single core performance. The short burst performance on this model here, the 10th gen Intel, feels a lot faster than even the Ryzen 5, the 3400G that I reviewed that was overclockable. This even feels faster. It just, the start menu, loading applications, everything pops up so much quicker. Even if I was using the same fast NVMe drive, it's always going to be the case there. Now, when it came to the integrated graphics performance, that's its area of weakness. So it's, okay, very good at playing, say, VP9 codecs, HEV, 10-bit files, 4K, no problem. But gaming, not as good as the Vega 8 graphics. So that's one area. So if you need that integrated graphics performance with a mini PC, take a look at one of the AMDs that I have reviewed in the channel. But if you're after all just very good performance for quite a good price point on this, then this is one to go for. Now, nothing is perfect, of course. So there are some areas where this is a little disappointing. So that is, well, no Type-C video output. The Type-C port on the back is just data only, which is disappointing. I would have liked to have seen Thunderbolt, of course, but Thunderbolt 3 would have pushed this price up a lot. And the licensing for it, maybe they couldn't even got it from Intel, so that's why it doesn't have it, of course. And then, well, why is the VESA bracket not in the box yet again? The last model with the 8th gen chip in it didn't have the VESA bracket, so that's annoying. I mean, we need it to mount it on the back of a TV, mount it on the back of a monitor. It's kind of the point of these mini PCs, to get them out of the way too. So lots of power. When you look at it, when you actually test it and run it out, a lot of power. But bear in mind, it is, of course, bare bones. So you need to supply and factor in. You need RAM, and you need an SSD and operating system on top of that 310 US or so this one does sell for. So comes recommended, but of course bear in mind those little cons there, but very good little mini PC here. Really do like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and yes, there will be more mini PC reviews in the channel. I intend to review some more Intels and yes, some more AMDs up and coming later on.